Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Jen Proctor. I'm the CEO and founder of Cultivated Entertainment, and I've got to spend my career at the intersection of talent, media, and brands. And today I lead a bi-coastal award-winning team that bring hundreds of high-impact partnerships to life each year across entertainment, brands, social campaigns, and cultural moments. I've had the privilege of working with some of the world's most influential talent and most forward-thinking brands, helping to shape projects that not only move the needle, but resonate in meaningful ways. For today's conversation, I am thrilled to be joined by this powerhouse group of voices that really represent every side of this conversation. Talent, representatives, brand execs. The landscape of partnerships is evolving faster than ever, and our goal here today is to unpack where partnerships stand now, the challenges that we're all navigating, and what success and solutions look like for the future. For those of you who've joined us that are running or building a brand, my hope is that today offers valuable insight and a deeper understanding of how transformative these collaborations can be when the right people are at the table. So now let's meet our 6 incredible panelists. First up, we have Ik. Ik and I go way back to the halls of CAA when we were in our early careers. Ik sits at the center of talent strategy and deal making. He's a partner at WME, representing some of the biggest names in entertainment and brokering transformative brand partnerships like Tyler, the Creator with American Express, Michael B. Jordan with Propel Water, Kid Cudi with Louis Vuitton, and Victoria Monet with Sephora. Ik, welcome.
Hey guys.
Next up, we have Dunia McNeily. She brings her powerhouse perspective from the world of talent management. Dunia is a partner at 3 Arts Entertainment, where she's brokered partnerships with clients like the Foster Sisters and Tinks, and she's the woman behind partnerships like the infamous Monica Lewinsky Reformation collaboration and Jessica Alba for Movado. Dunia, thank you so much for being here today. From the brand side, we have Chris Cavell. He leads the talent partnerships at Calm, which is one of the most recognized wellness brands in the world. He's been instrumental in building collaborations that not only drive engagement, but also promote real impact. During Chris's tenure, he's brokered talent partnerships with Matthew McConaughey, Harry Styles, and Jay Shetty. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
And next up, we have Noelle. Noelle is a partner at David Chang's Majordomo Media, which is the company behind so many of today's culturally relevant content and creators. Her expertise lives at the intersection of brand and talent and storytelling. I'm so thrilled to have you here, Noelle, and I've had the pleasure of working with her and Majordomo over the last couple of years, so thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
And Ezeh Gillespie, the Vice President of Brand Partnerships of Interscope Capital. Ezeh works to connect the label's roster of artists like Doechii, Troye Sivan, Kali Uchis, and Fletcher with global brands in bold, culture-shaping ways, bridging music, influence, and creative marketing. My team has the pleasure of working with Ezeh all the time. She is truly the best. Thank you, Ezeh, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
And last but not least, Lauryn Bosstick. Lauryn, thank you so much for being here. Lauryn is a true pioneer in personal branding and digital influence. She's the founder and voice behind The Skinny Confidential, a multi-platform brand and podcast that's truly redefined modern wellness and entrepreneurship. And she recently launched a brilliant collaboration with Bumpsuit. Lauryn, I've been loving seeing it everywhere. Please welcome Lauryn Bosstick.
Thank you, guys.
So I would like to start with where the current landscape is on talent partnerships. And I want to throw it out to the panelists. How has the definition of brand partnerships evolved over the last 5 years? Because I know it really has evolved so much. Ik, let's start with you. What have you seen on the representation side of these deals as they come in and ultimately close?
Yeah, I think the relationship has changed a lot in the sense that it used to be like more of a unilateral relationship, right? It'd be brand, these are the deliverables we needed, and it was all about kind of brands' goals. And I think that it's much more of a reciprocal relationship now. I see a lot of brands or agencies on behalf of brands coming, and they know that they have a tent pole, they have a moment, they have a launch that they want to do something around, but it's a lot of what do you have going on is there any way that we can make this partnership feel a bit more 360 and integrated by, coming into your ecosystem, you coming into ours and doing that. So I think in that sense, we're getting better, more impactful partnerships because you're just getting more buy-in when someone's doing stuff to support your initiatives as well as brands.
Yeah, agree. And Lauryn, I think you're really unique here because you have a brand, right? That, you do partnerships for your brand all the time, but you're also a talent, right? And you are doing brand deals for yourself all the time. How do you think things have shifted over the last 5 years?
I definitely think it's changed. I think people are really seeing the value of the micro influencer, but also not only that, what I've seen change the most and what's going to change is that instead of doing these influencer trips or dinners or celebration of influencers, I think people are going to start to realize the importance of doing that for the community. So what we're seeing with Skinny Confidential product is we're celebrating the community. If we're going to spend money on a dinner or a trip or whatever, a pop-up or whatever, it's going to be for the community, not for the micro influencers. So for me, it's like I strategically will gift the right micro influencers, and we're able to do that a lot through our podcast, which has been a great tool to be able to get product in, bigger people's hands. But as far as like what's really important and what to water, I've realized where you want to spend your budget is on community events.
And Zoe, what about on the artist side, right? Because music is culture, right? Music really defines culture. How have you seen these brand partnerships change in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of this hour, I'll echo a lot of what IK's saying because I think we do a lot of similar impactful work. But I think over the last 5 years, what I've seen is just more of an openness from brands to create even more authentic content with artists. I think giving them the power to self-capture in settings that they're really comfortable in, I think is strengthening their connection to their fans. I'm getting more healthy pushback from artists more than ever about really wanting to stay true to their message. And I think brands have successfully adapted to that, and it really shows in their campaigns.
And we are inundated with brand partnerships all day, every day, right? Whether it's on our social media or on a billboard that we see outside, and there's just all different types of partnerships all the time. What do you think is most appealing about partnerships in this current, day and age? And Noelle, I know that you work with a talent, but you also work with a variety of types of partnerships for your brand as well. So I'm curious, what do you think are some of the most appealing ways to do brand partnerships?
Yeah, for sure. I think more than anything, having a real 360 viewpoint on honestly both the brand and the talent side is super, super interesting. That's when you not only have, your typical partnership, but like a true deep partnership. It really takes understanding both sides. So what I really mean by that is, can you actually figure out partnerships that touch different layers of talent's business and in a lot of cases the brand's business? And like I said, it does take some homework, it does take time and a lot of conversations, but I think the right and the best types of partnerships ultimately come out of those big conversations too.
Yeah. And Dunia, how about you? From your clients' POV, what seem to be the partnerships that are the most appealing?
So I would say the partnerships that are most appealing for the clients that I work with are ones in which they can put their fingerprints on. So whether that's some sort of longer term ambassadorship where they're curating an edit, or if they're designing something, or if there's some way to have their voice come through the partnership to make it theirs, my clients all love that.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot more ownership from these partnerships, right? And less one-offs. So on that note, question for the reps in the room. I feel like it's always this gentle dance of creative ambition, right? And sort of commercial goals of the brand partners. So what are some ways that you navigate this with your clients? And IK, I guess, can we start with you?
That question comes up quite a bit, right? We have clients that obviously they just want to do any deal and get the most money because that's going to help certain parts of their lives, and others are super creatively driven. And I think really the only way around that, I don't think there's any silver bullet fix. It's just being really transparent from the beginning of those conversations about what it is and more importantly what it isn't, and like kind of just letting them make that decision. It's like, where on that spectrum, like, you know, on that pendulum, how far does it swing for you? Like, are you going to do this, and it might be for a category that you might not be able to get your creative vision out there, but it allows you to be more creative in other parts of your life. Take a movie that pays less, right, to do some of those things. But, you know, I think so long as you stay authentic, you can kind of figure out how much you want to do or not do when you can't fully lean in and put your foot into it creatively. But you just got to kind of have to let them decide by putting it all out there in the beginning, so there's no surprises, because that's when people get really frustrated at all parties and then everybody loses.
And Zoe, how about you? I know that, like, having worked with you personally, you really are forward thinking, right? But I think it's always that gentle dance of creative ambition and commercial goals, right? So how do you navigate some of that with the artists you work with?
Yeah, I think similarly to what IK say, like there's definitely a time and a place for each goal, right? And so when I'm working on a big campaign or even a smaller one with an artist and a brand, I always try and see if it's possible to bring in the artist creative director or a photographer they really love, so that even if it's a category or a campaign that they're new to, there's still some familiarity on set or in the way that campaigns look when they release, so that everything's really cohesive. Because again, I think at the end of the day, we're asking two entities to tell one story together. So how do we make sure that it feels authentic to both the brand who's trying to sell their product or, you know, launch something new, with the artist who is on tour or in an album cycle where certain photographers or creative lenses are important to them. So I think that's where I really advocate for the artist in a way that I know will also help the brand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now I want to talk a little bit about social media, right? And social media has blurred these lines of creator and celebrity and brand. And I think it's also really impacted the way that we do brands and we do partnerships. We have this way to measure value now that we didn't have before, right? By the number of followers, by how much engagement there are, right? It's very transactional and very measurable. So, I mean, Chris, I'd like to throw it to you first, because I know at Calm you do a lot of social-led campaigns. So why do you think that many brands are doing these types of campaigns versus different types?
When you hit it, like you said the word measure, I think that's like the biggest thing is, you know, with the current climate and like economics and budgets, like just being under a microscope, like we have to tell the story of how our money and budget is being used internally and that return on investment, right? So I think when you unlock these channels, you just get all those data and analytics. I also think kind of doing the storytelling online allows you to pivot really fast, right? You're not putting up a out of home billboard that's just static and, you know, it's going to be up for 30 days. If it doesn't resonate, you could pivot. So I think it just gives you a lot of options, and then it allows you different ways to kind of tell that story, pivot, and then also tell that story internally to justify kind of that spend. So I think that's why a lot is happening online. And then to the point of what Lauryn said, community, right? It's so easy to share. It's so easy to send a message. It's like, that's how we're kind of doing things these days. So I see a lot of that kind of creative starting on social and starting there, and then seeing how it could go outward, but then also vice versa. How can out of home and all of these more traditional ways be funneled back into the attention economy of social media?
Yeah. And Lauryn, you know, over even in the years that I've known and worked with you, your social following has continued to grow and is only growing. Have you seen a direct correlation between the size of your audience and your engagement with the types of deals that you're doing, or the types of sales that are happening for Skinny Confidential?
What I try to do with my audience is, instead of thinking about how to get more, I focus on the audience that I have. And I've done that since the beginning. And I think that this is a good way to have your audience kind of go out there and be soldiers for you. So say you have 100 followers, you really want to focus on those 100 followers, because they're going to go out to happy hour with 10 of their girlfriends, and they're going to be so excited about you that they actually become the influencer in the scenario. So like, let's say like there's a girl named Stephanie who's following me. I try to engage with her and respond and focus on her as opposed to getting more. She goes out to dinner with her friends. she starts talking about how she picked up some tip from our podcast and how it enhanced her life. And now she's the hero, she's the influencer. So when it comes to followers, I try to be the guide and I try to focus on what I have. And when I do that, I notice that the following grows in an organic way because you almost get your audience to go out and pitch you as opposed to like you pitching yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I would tell anyone who's trying to grow any kind of following, whether you have 2 million followers. It's like focus on what's in front of you. That's what I think works best. As far as like my following, there's been no epiphany where I like woke up with tons of followers the next day. It's been a slow build, like the Three Little Pigs. It's a house of brick, and it's slow, it's methodical, it's thoughtful, and I think it grows if you can continue to provide value.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, brands really understand that, right? And they understand that sometimes it really isn't about the millions and millions and millions of followers. Sometimes it really is about that very specific demographic following that is going to in turn sell your product, right? I'd love, I know you have a pretty interesting POV about social media, right? And how that has changed how brand deals kind of come about and are done today. So I'd love to toss it over to you for your perspective as well.
Yeah, I think as it relates to social, I think Lauryn hit it on the head earlier. Like how important podcasters, micro influencers, all those, you know, types of talent have become recently. I think, you know, there's two different worlds. It's traditional talent, you know, actors, actresses, athletes, musicians, whatever have you. And I think that there's like an aspiration that you're leading into. There's like a sociology that informs your creative and you put it together and that's your campaign and you put it out, try and inspire something for people to aspire to. Whereas I think with, you know, these people are having a direct conversation with the marketplace. You almost are getting advice from these people, right? You're going and like you're more apt to figure out, you know, what movie to go and see, what shows you're going to go and do. So I think it's really being dialed into what you're trying to say with whatever the campaign is. Are you trying to drive towards something? Is it just about, you know, ubiquity and getting a message out there, or are you trying to have a call to action? And I think that's really, you know, that's the fault line. You really dictate what type of talent you're going to get into, and then hybrids of those things.
And I think social media also makes us, you know, it makes us feel so much more connected to the talent, right? And I think along those lines, there's the use of DMs, right? Brands can slide into DMs and ask a talent, hey, can we do a collaboration with you, right?
It's tough for representatives, right? When like the things are happening, but sometimes it's good, right? If you have a great relationship with your talent and you have, you know, a brand reaches out to them and they DM them and it comes back to you and you just help kind of shape that thing. But now you know where you're starting from. And that also takes some pressure off the situation because you don't have to do this dance where you're kind of posturing with the brand. Like if it's not this, then we're going to pull away. If your talent wants to do it, then you kind of know where you're standing. And things can just be a little bit more organic because they're usually into it versus it being, you know, I'm doing this for a check. If a brand reaches out to them, they're like, I'm going to do this because I like this brand. And that's just a much easier place to try and put something together from, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. So now I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're facing, right? On the brand side, on the deal side, on the talent side, like just in this current landscape. The first challenge that I know in my experience I always come across is evaluating talent, right? I think if I had $1 for every time I got a list of like the same 10 celebrities for, you know, it could be for like a women's underwear brand or, you know, a men's athletic brand, right? It's like, and we all know those same 10 celebrities. So there's nothing more refreshing when a brand really has a clear vision and a clear reason and a clear meaning behind the type of talent that they're trying to align with. So I think, Chris, like I'd love to throw it to you as someone on the brand side. How do you know? How do you evaluate the talent that's going to be right for a particular collaboration?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that kind of comes across my desk every day because I service every aspect of the company, whether it be our D2C kind of like more pop culture playful side of the brand Calm or our healthcare side, right? That is working with clients like Optum and providing mental health solutions. It's a very different type of talent. It's a very different type of message. So I start by asking a lot of questions internally to my colleagues of like, what are you trying to achieve? Are we building brand? Are we trying to get earned media? What is the activation? What is the deliverable for talent? How can we shape those deliverables so it's an easier burden on talent? I mean, just yesterday, I got a request for somebody to do a keynote presentation, a big celebrity. I said, they're not doing that. Can we shape it to be more of a fireside chat? What's going to get us to say yes a little bit more? What's in our talent's wheelhouse a little bit more? But I think to answer your question, it really is about getting really clear on what is the goal that you want to achieve, and then starting from there. Jen, I think about the work we just did with Not Calm Moms. So for everybody listening, basically Calm showed up for Mother's Day. Surprise, but we wanted to show up in a surprising way. So we created a campaign called Not Calm Moms, where we really, to Lauryn's point, built this around community and a rage room. And we want it to be stunty. We wanted it to be drive earned media, but real and authentic, right? So when we were working with Jen on, who are those talent targets and those influencers and creators, it was people that I've never come across in my life, but they were people who had deep, meaningful, specific niche audiences, who are talking about mom every day, who are talking about community every day. So I think it's just knowing your audience too and putting that message there in those circles. And that's kind of how I go about kind of, finding the right talent from the brand side. But then you're like on my side too, and then I'll sunset. I'm also trying to navigate executives, right? Everybody wants a big A-list celebrity like Matthew McConaughey to drive earned media, but maybe depending on what we're doing, that's not the right talent or that's not the right approach or authenticity. So it's just that dance and that juggle that we constantly face on the brand side.
I'd love to add to that because Chris, I appreciate you kind of calling it out from the brand side. I think what's really interesting about musicians is their business is 360. So a lot of times I'm talking to a brand and they're saying, oh, but like we wish their following was a little bit over X million number of followers. And I'm like, yeah, but they're selling out tours in ways that other talent might not be at that level yet. So I think when brands are asking the right questions and talking to the right people who are able to give them information about, sure, maybe their follower count isn't exactly what you would want from a vanity standpoint. Their engagement is X rate. They're selling, $50 per head of merch every night on their tour, or they're streaming this and it's converting from TikTok. Like, I think that there's a lot of, and I don't even want to call them niche because a lot of these artists have huge reach within big communities, but I think that brands should be asking more questions and also helping us kind of steer them into talent that will be impactful with their consumers because they have reach or spending power in ways that may not be visible just from their follower count.
Noelle, I feel like you might have thoughts on this as well.
I always have thoughts, Jen. No, I sit at a really interesting intersection of so many things all at once. So one part of what I do is really overseeing the storytelling side, so really the media company there, and that it definitely has everything to do with casting, which is how Jen and I have met. Separately, there's overseeing talent. So I manage Dave Chang, I manage a bunch of other chefs. And so I think the answer for both of those sides is still the same, which is who cares? Who just cares on a very basic level? For talent, it makes the most sense whenever, the brand tie-in works and it just is a natural part of their life. From a casting side, I mean, we see this all the time with our shows. It's who cares about food? Who cares about like being involved in the process? And so as I'm thinking about evaluating talent, it has everything to do with, do you want to be a part of this micro world, basically, whether it's a project, a show? And that is honestly, that shows more success to me than numbers alone. So it actually dovetails perfectly into what Chris and Zoe both said, which is it all starts with asking the right questions. And it also really, it's so tethered to the talent and the community and just the brand that they've personally built. So it's a little bit of a combination of everything.
Agree. And I think it's also about being really specific in what you're asking to. And, Chris and Zoe, I think you sort of touched on this, but it's a gentle dance between, okay, the brand wants this and this is their creative vision, but the talent needs X amount of dollars for all of these deliverables, right? And it's kind of balancing personal integrity, monetization, and I know we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I always have this saying where I think there's 3 reasons that you say yes to a project. One is it's passion, right? You don't care what the money is. You are so passionate about this. And I think that's like that community piece, right? That's like really leaning into what makes sense to you or your brand. The next is resume value, right? If I do this, is this going to make me look cool, or am I going to be a part of the zeitgeist? Am I going to be, getting the right press? Is this going to make noise? And number 3 is money, right? And hopefully number 3 is usually, the less chosen ones. But at the same time, IK, you hit this earlier, like sometimes a talent needs money to fund whatever it is. And I think a lot of times with brands, there's not an understanding of how much to pay for talent or how much do I offer for this, right? So I'd love to throw it, Dunia, Noelle, IK, Zoe, even Lauryn, any of you, like, how do you figure out like what the value of a deal is?
So I'll jump in on that. The value is really case by case, right? And it really stems from how aligned the client is with the brand and if it makes sense for them. So as a manager, my role is to be a business partner with my clients and a strategic partner for them and their businesses. And so my job is kind of to keep them on track for what our longer term goals are that we set together. And so I basically apply a lens over each opportunity that comes our way to see, does this take you one step further to where we're going? Does this take you one step further to building the image that we're trying to curate for your audience, et cetera? So that's how my clients and I typically look at each opportunity. And if it's on the bubble, then, tie goes to the fee. If they get it up, then, it's definitely more enticing for them to take it. And then, the caveat obviously is if the client wants a new deck on the house or a new car or whatever, right? Sometimes they'll just take the deal that might not totally align. But when that's the case and the deals don't totally align, but they want to make some extra money, then we try to craft the partnership so that, it's a very impactful, quick hit. So it's not, a longer term partnership, so that they can give the brand what the brand is looking for, but also kind of move on from that and not be deviated from the longer term plan for too long.
That makes sense. Audiences are more savvy than ever, right? We hear the word authenticity. It's trite at this point. It comes up every freaking day. How do we know how to navigate the right partnerships and use that sort of creative thinking and out of the box ideas? I think like Dunia, the Monica Lewinsky Reformation, right? I think is such a great example, because I think that was, it was such a wow, oh my gosh, right? And felt out of the box, but yet felt so perfect. So I think, what is some of your advice to keeping audiences on their toes, but also, doing things that feel fresh and unique?
Yeah, make a splash, take a risk. And that was a huge risk for her. She had, not really been in the public eye for a while. And she had never fronted anything in the fashion world, which is a scary world, right? A lot of people are intimidated by the fashion world, but we created the campaign to be very empowering to women. And we tied it with a charitable organization to get people out and vote. So it made a little bit of sense for her. But she really trusted me in the process. It was difficult to get her there. I guess taking it back a little bit, those of us over, 35 know Monica from history and the situation that happened to her that we all kind of lived through with the president and how she was treated by the media, et cetera. But then we found that all these Gen Zers and below see her as a feminine icon. And so that is what kind of caused us to put this campaign together, to put her front and center in a really cool way and take her power back. And it totally broke the internet. It was awesome.
Yeah, it did. Lauryn, has there ever been a partnership that you've done, you know, recently or in the past that you just feel like wasn't right? It didn't feel outside of the box. It didn't feel fresh, and it sort of landed flat because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me many times. I think a recent one is one that I just did for a baby brand that they're coming to me to communicate to the audience that I've been communicating with for the past 14 years. So to me, it's like they're coming to me as like the facilitator. And then they came in and they want to micromanage the entire process. And what ends up happening is you take something that's seamless integration and should be seamless integration, and you make it into a full-blown ad where the audience can smell it and it feels like you're Vanna White. Yeah. And what I do, and I would suggest this to anyone, you know, who's in this position, is I get on the phone with the brand. And I don't email, I don't go through my manager. My manager can be on the phone with me, but I get on the phone and I sort of like level set and I say, this needs to be a win-win-win. It's got to be a win for you. It's got to be a win for me. But most importantly, it's got to be a win for the audience. And this particular brand wanted to take the caption that I made and literally rewrite it in their voice. They wanted to use words like clinically tested and best selling and mom founder by mom. And it's like, these are words that they're giving scripts to hundreds of different people. And if the brand thinks that the audience cannot smell that, they're underestimating the audience. And what I notice most from brands is that they do underestimate the audience. They don't realize how savvy the consumer is. And the consumer doesn't want to be sold to. My goal as a creator is that when you're checking out on PayPal, you don't even remember how you got there. I don't need to be the hero in it. The consumer needs to be the one that seeks out the brand and finds the brand. And when a brand is shoving it in your face and it's their messaging that they've given the brief to 6,000 other people, it's stale. And so what I've realized, and I just had this conversation before this call, is I'm not a parrot for a brand. I will give you my interpretation of a product and how I liked it and what I liked about it. And I want it to be seamlessly integrated into the content so the audience can get value from that opinion. So what I do with Skinny Confidential, the product line, is I don't give creators a script. I don't give them talking points. I don't give them a brief. Sure, I'll say like, here's the product, this is how it works, but do what with you will. So like, for instance, like the ice roller, I'm not saying you have to roll it on your face and show the logo and say how it depuffs you. I'll say, if you like to use it after a bikini wax or on your kid's bee sting, like that's how you use it. I like to get the creator's interpretation of the product to the audience. That's what makes a strong partnership. When you get a brand that's literally editing the caption and adding their like buzzwords, it's so obvious and blatant. And for me, I think I'm to the point where it's like, if they don't let me have my own opinion on it, I think it's just not a fit.
It's interesting because I'm always in the middle of this, right? I'm working for the brand, but then I'm working, with the talent and talent reps. I think a lot of times you're in the middle of it too. But it really is fascinating when a brand comes to the plate and says, we want this to be so authentic to this talent, and this is why we're doing this. And then as you proceed in the transaction or the deal, it's like all of a sudden like, oh no, we don't want that caption, or wait, where's the tag, or wait, and all of this stuff. And so I think like this sort of brings me into the next piece of our conversation, which is like talking about the solutions, right? And I think that a mutually beneficial partnership, but like, yeah, my biggest flag to brands is, you don't have to have all the keywords and the hashtags and all the things, because the audience is so savvy. And I challenge you to continue to think creatively and to continue to try and do it fresh and different, right? So, I mean, throwing it out to the group, what does a successful and mutually beneficial partnership look like for everyone? And I mean, maybe it's you speak to a specific, partnership that you did recently and why it worked so well, but, throw it out to the group if anyone wants to jump in.
For me, I just did Bumpsuit, like you mentioned, and that was one of the most beautiful partnerships I've ever had. And I think it's because things lined up. I'm pregnant. I have a lot of mothers who follow along, and Bumpsuit supports a woman to feel flattered and elevated and elegant during pregnancy, but it also is it's like non-maternity maternity wear. Like you could also wear it if you're going to the gym and you just want to tighten things in. And for me, what was so cool about them is it was a total collaboration. They sent their ideas, I refined it and edited it. I sent them ideas, they refined it and edited it, and then we got to build it together. So when it launched, it was like a dream come true, because it was both of us working together. I also noticed that the people working on it were people who really understood social media. They got it, they understood it. And I think where there's a disconnect is when the brand just wants their messaging through and that's it. And so with Bumpsuit, it was like, it was a total conversation, and it made for one of the best partnerships I've ever had. And what ended up happening is I ended up, committing to, like, let's say 10 posts, and I've tripled the post because I'm so excited that they let me be the creative director. That's what the talent wants, is to be the creative director. I think that when you forget that element, they don't get as excited to post. They will over post for you and over deliver when they feel like they have control of that creative. I think it's really important to think about when you are hiring an ambassador or an influencer, an entrepreneur, or a podcast host. It's like they have to have their own opinion on the product.
I'll double down on that. Like, yeah, I've seen it over and over again from a brand side. The more autonomy you give your talent, if they're getting to the point where they're aligning with you, there's some sort of connection and why that's being met. And I think about our Not Calm Moms activation that we just did, Jen. I think all of those women creators, I think they would have done this partnership and activation deliverables for free, because it was something not just that speaks to their audience, but that they truly enjoyed doing. And then, to Lauryn's point, if you could ever get, like, for me, it is a home run when talent's like, hey, let me get on a call with you and vibe you out before we say, hey, I want to do this. It's so disarming on my side, because it's like, oh, hey, it takes away kind of this hierarchy of, like, service providing, and more of like, we're trying to achieve this together. And I think that had a better end result for everybody. But then, it allows us to listen more, because we know, oh, this person's dialed in, this person gets it. We don't need to do media training with them. Forget the PR talking points. They get it. And then they just over deliver and they over post. And I've seen that over and over again. And even when we're doing sleep stories, just from the creative of the story, I say, hey, here are two options that I feel kind of embody your voice and your type of storytelling. Or hop on the phone, tell me what you want. I'm mindful of your time. We could do this either way. And it goes both ways. Some people say yes, some people hop on the call, but we're always listening and responding. And even when we release it, it's, hey, here's a go-to-market deck of assets that you could just post and, like, do your copy. We just want people to celebrate and know what we created together. I don't need them to download the app. I don't need them to do this. Like, let's just share to everybody what we created, and the people who are going to show up are going to show up. And for a specific example, like, this was like 4 years ago, like Reggae Jean Page after Bridgerton, everybody was like, is he going to post the cover art of the sleep story? He posted a thirst trap of him in bed reading a book and said, come sleep with me tonight. that went viral. So it was just allowing talent to speak to their audience in their own way. It just totally will have outsized impact. So totally double downing on what Lauryn and everybody's saying right here.
And what about the deal making, that's working now, or, advice for the future? So IK and Dunia, looking at you from the representation side, like, what are ways that brands should think about these deals that are going to be the most appealing to talent?
The cost of production and creative is getting so expensive, and because they're just such intricate things, like you go to some of these performances that people are doing, they're mind-blowing, and that costs money. And so I think when people can think again about this bilateral relationship there, that's what's going to be, you laid it out perfectly before, Jen. It's like, is it passion? Is it resume? Is it money? And I think it's not, a lot of these things aren't just about the money itself. It's like, so I can get my passion off and I can get my creative off, I need money to help underwrite these things. So I think anytime that you can ask the questions again on the front end with the representatives or directly to the talent about what's important to them, you can start to kind of retroactively figure out those things and say, how can we have an alignment on what we need, whether it's a project launch or, we're just trying to push into a new community, or we want more deeper cultural relevancy and resonance. You can kind of hit those things, like two things can be true at the same time. So I think it's just, and everyone's kind of saying the same thing. It's like, if there's a less rigid way of kind of looking at what your KPIs are, the way that you measure these things, then I think you should lean towards, it's just, complicated issues take complicated solutions, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just getting your, boilerplate messaging out in your captions or whatever, that's not going to work anymore. So I think it's just having a true to form conversation with folks. I think that creates some fertile ground to have a real impactful relationship.
Literally, one of my solutions is relationships, right? Transactions are transactions, but the way to do it right is to be able to pick up the phone or go and have a coffee with some, to Lauryn's point, she's the talent getting on the phone with the brand, but like, at the end of the day, we are all people, right? We're all getting something out of this. The brand is getting more exposure and leaning into an audience that this talent has. The talent is getting money or, a variety of other things, right? Cool factor or status. And I think relationships, like it's just so many times, can you send me an email? I'm like, let's go back to like getting on the phone and having conversations with people and like really getting to the heart of what everyone's trying to achieve and finding a middle ground.
Well, the agents typically are the ones that are making the deals, and then us managers are consulted as far as if it fits into their schedule, if the creative makes sense for all the other things that we're working on, et cetera. So by the time it comes to me, I'm really looking at those sorts of things. And I haven't really dealt with any breaks in that system or issues. But what I think in the deal making process, brands could understand is, on a more granular way, having respect for the talent's time. One hiccup on some of the deal making is when brands refuse to pay a portion of the fee until the entire partnership is over. They don't understand how many hours go into the concept phase, the shooting, the reshooting, et cetera, et cetera. And then some of these partnerships are months long or longer. And I think that the brands need to understand that the creators should be compensated for kind of every step of the way. Respect for their voice and authenticity is just really, really important in the partnerships. And what I find a lot, because as the manager, I oversee the execution from start to finish on every brand partnership. I would say that my clients and my biggest frustration is the moving of the goalposts sometimes, or trying to like tweak what the deliverables are after we've already agreed and signed a contract. It feels really disrespectful and frustrating. And as Lauryn touched on earlier, when the clients are totally invested in the partnership and feel like their voice, their authentic voice is being heard and pushed through the partnership, they're going to go above and beyond. I see it all the time with my clients. But when they start to feel disrespected, then it becomes this kind of like push and pull of the partnership. and the whole thing becomes more difficult than it should be. So I think that's something too.
I'll add on to that. Like, I think on the brand side, that's what's challenging about these long-term partnerships, like 3-year deals versus, you know, one-off activations around like a cultural event, like a Mother's Day, is trying to justify the cost of these deliverables at like year 0.0 and try to create, you know, what year 3 is going to look like with the companies evolving. Yeah, there's these consumer products and, you know, you're selling, you know, goods, but like when you're a company like Calm and over the last 5 years, you've evolved from a mindfulness meditation company to a mental health solution. You know, services that we came up with 3 years ago are really hard. And, you know, I could say his name because he's like one of the, you know, faces of Calm, Jay Shetty. He came on to bring his daily offering to Calm. But then as we've kind of shifted our core businesses, we were able to work in collaboration with his management, his team, and his partners to justify, hey, this is what we wanted to achieve. Like, this is what we're going to achieve. And this is how we're optimizing your time and services. And we really do that together. It's done in a much better way. But even me on the inside trying to navigate the moving of the goalposts and the reframing of the services, it is hard on this side. And it's even hard to have those conversations with, you know, managers and agents. So that just goes back to the point of like, hop on the phone, establish relationships. You're going to be able to solve this together. And at the end of the day, it's probably going to require less time and energy and effort on everybody. And the outcome that you're going to get is going to exceed whatever you intended, because you're listening to, you know, what you need in the moment versus what you anticipated you would have needed 3 years ago. So it is just a tricky dance, but, you know, positive and negatives of 3-year deals. And to the point of that, it's like when I outreach to talent, everybody's like, hey, we want a 3 to 5 year deal. We want this. We want to be part of a family. And I think that tends to be a sticking point for a lot of people. So those are just some insights to that point that I see on the brand side.
And the last topic that I feel like would be amiss if we don't just bring it up and touch on it is technology and AI, right? I think, you know, in my business, I'm competing with these platforms that, you know, you pay a monthly subscription and you say, I want to have a bunch of influencers to help sell my lip gloss, and there's no human interaction. You know, it's all done with technology and AI. And I think for brands who don't have a big spend, right, this could be a solution, right? And not knocking anything. There's plenty of room for everybody's work. But I'm curious to the group, right? What are your thoughts on AI and how it's going to impact brand partnerships? IK, I know you have some thoughts, so I'm going to throw to you.
There's certainly some things that are scary, right, about it. But it's coming. And so I think it's incumbent upon everyone to get an understanding of its use cases and understand how to use it as a tool in your business. I think it was, I saw like an interview, maybe it was like Barack Obama, maybe, and he was like, people shouldn't be worried about AI taking your job. You should be worried about someone who uses AI taking your job, right? So I think it's, if you're talent, if you're brands, it's just really doing education and understanding exactly what those things are coming from and thinking about what's your business, where do I get stuck, what's a difficulty for me, and is there something within this new onsetting technology that can help me solve for those things? And then just kind of paying attention to the marketplace and seeing what other people are doing, not having to reinvent the wheel all the time. But I think it just needs to be used as a tool. And I think once we do that, yeah, there's going to be some contraction. Things are going to be different. They're going to change. But I think so long as we understand that it is coming and figure out how to use these things, it can be a really, really powerful, you know, tool for everyone.
I think at scale is kind of like what we're talking about. It's like, are we talking about talent partnerships and brand partnerships, or are we talking about growth marketing? You know, if you're doing something at scale and you're just, you know, doing a spend because you need a ROI, I think some of those, you know, systems are probably going to be beneficial, especially for smaller companies. But when you have such brand recognition like Calm or Pepsi or like you name it, like your brand is everything. So I think what an algorithm and what AI doesn't realize is aligning with a partner that doesn't embody your values, but you're just seeing the output of engagement rates, right? So that's where I get like, we don't really work in the influencer space. The first time we did was with Jen, and it was such a curated, 5 mom that had a, bespoke, distinct voice. But there's no way that we could do something at scale and not take into consideration what is talent's voice, like what are their values, like who is their audience, like even if you could get really niche in some of those kind of filters, what is at risk and the investment that goes into it. It's probably better just to do something curated and have the team to just do it the way that we have been. But they're trade-offs.
So my final question is, I'd love to just throw it out to the group to give your best piece of advice to anyone who's joined us today. What needs to happen to make brand partnerships successful? What is that one piece of advice that you would give everyone?
I would say my best piece of advice is the most successful partnerships that I've ever had is when it's a 360 approach and we get to have the founder on the podcast. And I would say don't sleep on long form content. So, if we have a founder on the podcast and we're able to tell their story, and the most successful one we've ever done, if someone wants to really see the essence of what I'm saying, is we interviewed the Branch Basics founder, Allison, on our podcast, and we told her story, and they literally sold out the next day. And it wasn't because Michael and I are like amazing interviewers or anything like that. It's because she came on not wanting to sell, but to tell her story to the audience. And her story resonated with so many moms that every single mom went and bought Branch Basics because they wanted to create a better non-toxic home for their family. So again, you put the power in the consumer's hand to be the hero of their family. So the best partnership, I think, is 360. So you do a founder interview with the founder comes on not wanting to sell with a motive, they just tell their story, and then you take the assets from that podcast, you clip it up, you make social clips, maybe you make an authentic ad out of it, and then maybe the person who's interviewed you, like I interviewed her, I got to do my own interpretation of Branch Basics, put it on my story, put it on my Instagram, put it in my newsletter. So now it's become this seamless integration where everyone knows I use Branch Basics, they know the story of the founder, they know the why, and then they get to go back to their family as the mother and be like, we're switching to non-toxic cleaning supplies. That is like, it's a win for just everyone. And to me, as a creator, it feels purposeful because they've upgraded their home to be non-toxic and they've eliminated all the cleaning supplies that cause all these hormone disruptors. So that was like a really great one. And that's what I would be looking at, long form content and then chopping it up to make it into smaller pieces.
I would say just start with the relationship at the beginning, whether it's a one-off or it's a 5-year deal. I think, and I think all sides can do a better job of this. I think representatives, talent, brand. I think if at the beginning when you're having a conversation and you're thinking about dating, I think it's take that extra time to like find some common ground with the people that you're doing business with. It will pay dividends in the end, whether it's that deal or later on down the road. But people will stop, like they'll move away from their respective corners and understand like everyone has a job to do. So I think if you start with that, and again, just take like an extra minute to like get to know the people that you're doing work with, every time you're gonna have a better experience.
From the artist perspective, I would just encourage brands to remember that they're human beings at the end of the day who change their mind or have opinions or, questions or need things. So I think in my role, I'm just always trying to be an advocate to remind people that we might be selling a product, but they're not a product and they're human beings. So yeah, that's what I would leave with that.
Yeah, I think we all need a hug. I was going to say emotional intelligence and just being kind to each other and just having that kind of team spirit and collaboration, picking up the call. So yeah, there's a trend happening right now.
No, I think it's just remembering that both sides of the tables are filled with creatives. And as much as this is a business, there is a creative form to what we're doing both on the talent and on the brand side. To use those creative juices.
I love the team spirit phrase that put out, because we really are in the trenches, especially, you know, all pieces, but like the go-betweens of the representatives and then the brand agencies, sometimes the brand reps. I love that. I think that's really important. And then I think both sides understanding the other side's agenda, right? The brand has to move product. They've got to have an approvable ROI on the spend. They have goals that they need to hit. And then the creators also need to stay true to their audience and their brand, and they can't be a sellout, because the talent is more concerned with retaining their audience and retaining their audience's trust. And they'll start to dissipate and disappear once they seem like they're just a human billboard. So I think everybody understanding the other side's purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I think as we look to the future, and I love how organically it came up throughout this entire conversation, but like the strongest collaborations are always rooted in trust and authenticity and shared values. And I think that willingness to create together, right? Outside just this is a transaction. So for everyone who's joined us, I say, you know, let's keep challenging those old norms, and let's keep championing creativity and building relationships that go beyond just, you know, exchange of money or goods. And to my amazing panel, you all are absolutely incredible. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this time and for sharing all your brilliant minds with all of us today. And to everyone joining, thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.